Hello, happy holiday weekend to everybody. We're getting ready to read chapter 12, Stubborn Llama. And sorry I'm running a little late. We were actually out of town this weekend and I've just got in, and so I've set it up and we're ready to go. And you're a little closer than me than normal because the sun is setting and we have like crazy lighting going on in the back room here. So if you see some weird light rays or something, then just focus on the sound of my voice. Anyway, let's see what's going on. Okay, so Chapter 12 picks up right where Chapter 11 left off, and so I'm just going to pick up from there, and or go back, read the last couple paragraphs, and then dive right into the next chapter. Okay. Didn't you say the young waiter from the banquet lived across from you? I asked. Maybe he could help. That is a good idea, CL said. I'll message him. He tapped his wristband and then started making motions in the air. I'd never noticed his wristband before. CL was always dressed like a butler, and I guess it had just gone unnoticed with his uniform. Centaurs might not have a bank stamp like mages do, but it seemed like they found a way to have most of the same functionality. Now, how was I going to bring up her magic core? I couldn't just blurt out that it had a soft spot like a balloon, and I was afraid it was going to pop. I have a question for you, I said to NL. Who do you go to check on your magic cores? Do you have a mage that helps you with that? Magic core? She looked perplexed. So did CL and the captain. Flipping over to chapter 12. I'm probably saying it wrong, I replied. I haven't known any centaurs until I came here. I'm talking about the piece of magic that is inside you. It's normally about this big. I made a small circle with my finger and thumb, and it sits right here. I gave NL a pat just behind her front legs. They still looked very confused. Jason, we don't have any magic, CL said. Remember the story I told you about our history? Our ancestors were stripped of magic by the mage that took our homeland. I didn't go into a lot of detail, but that is why they had so much trouble when they came to Earth. Without magic, we couldn't figure out what was safe to eat. We couldn't heal ourselves from all the new bacteria and viruses we came across. Our defense was reduced because we fought with magic. Even the way we gave birth used our powers. We were dying as a people until we came to the house and figured out new, non-magical ways of surviving. We remembered the power we used to have. As it lives in our legends, but we don't actually have any power today. I recall you telling me that, I said, but I thought you said that the mage shut your powers away, not that he actually destroyed them. They are gone, the captain said flatly. We know this. Once our ancestors came to the house, we asked for help from the resident mages. They could find no trace of magic, and they had no idea how to reverse it. For hundreds of years, we petitioned the help of the most powerful mages from all the houses, but no one could help us. Finally, we stopped asking. We are doing well now. We have learned to thrive without magic. We have a home, and we have our place here. It is enough. So nobody knows you have magic now? I asked incredulously. We work with mages every day, the captain said. They know our story. If they had seen something in us, they would have said so. Maybe they just didn't look, I suggested. Or if they did see something, they figured it wasn't normal for you. It was normal for you. I can tell by the response I'm getting that this is not something you normally discuss. No, we do not, CL said in a calming tone, as the captain was starting to look upset. It is a painful part of our history. We are a proud people, and it is hard to talk about something so depressing and frustrating. I completely understand that, I said softly. Believe me, the last thing I want to do is piss off the captain of the guard while I'm injured and deep in your homeland. I'm not bringing this up because I want to. I'm bringing it up because I have to. We have a very unexpected problem that affects NL. But in order to talk about that, I first need you to believe me that you have magic. The captain stormed over, stared down at me, and declared with authority, "I believe you are mistaken." I stared right back. I was not backing down from this. "I believe you mean well," she continued. "I believe you are not aware of the unrest and upset you would cause by saying these things outside of this room. You are a talented mage, but you will not speak of this again." Wow, she was serious. CL looked ill with worry. NL looked like she wanted to get up and hobble away, but she was too afraid to move. That's when I felt it. There was a weight in the room. It wasn't magic. It was something else. It felt like something very powerful was looking at me. Something familiar. I heard a growl. It was deep, full of bass, that rose to an ear-splitting yowl. It sounded like someone had stepped on the tail of a tiger. I looked over at Bermuda, and he was fuzzed up big time. His tail was lashing back and forth, and his eyes were huge. He was giving the captain the full battle stare. I now knew that look. In his mind, this was an alley on a moonlit night. The captain was his enemy, and we were here to bear witness. We all just stared at him in shock. Then he slowly stepped forward and growled again. The captain, who was still standing over me menacingly, stood her ground. Then the floor started shaking in sync with Bermuda's rumbles. The furniture began to rattle. The pictures shook on the wall. I could feel it through my pillows, so I'm sure the centaurs were feeling the vibrations coming up through their feet. My little furry warrior was putting the captain on notice. Either back down or there was going to be a smackdown. Bermuda took one more step forward. The captain took one step back. That set the precedent as Bermuda stalked over and then sat in front of me. The captain backed up and gave him space. For a moment, all was quiet. I could still feel the weight in the room. If anything, it felt even more pronounced. Then I realized what it was. It was the same feeling I'd had at Sandy and John's wedding. The All Rune was here. I felt the sense of destiny pressing down on me. This evening was about more than just healing one centaur llama. This had to be about getting them their magic back. I waited and listened, trying to feel if it was giving me directions, but I got nothing. It was here, it was watching and supporting me, but it was up to me to make this happen. "Captain, NL, CL, I need you to hear me," I said with newfound authority and power. "I have the ability to sense magic on a level that I haven't seen with other mages so far. I can sense even the tiniest unit of magic, and I can sense power that is covered. Magic does not have to be radiating for me to feel it." I didn't go into my whole magic sight thing. That was a bit much for the moment, and probably more than they needed to know about me. They just needed to know that I was special and believe in what I was saying. "Captain, you have a magic core about this big." I made a small round shape with my thumb and forefinger. "Your magic is very dense, and it is very contained. It is not emitting magic at all." "CL, you have a core that is bigger." I made another round shape about the size of a walnut. "Your magic is also very dense and contained. It's not emitting magic either." "NL, you have a magic core that is much bigger." I made an apple-sized round shape. "Your magic is contained, but only barely. It is starting to break through its shell, and I don't know what will happen when it does." "None of you have an aura, so there's nothing to contain the magic when it escapes. For all I know, the magic will just leave, dissipating into the air, and I don't know what will then happen to you." I addressed all of them again. "This is why it is so important that you believe me. Your race has magic. You need to get that basic fact before we can start talking about NL." CL believed me, and he was afraid for his niece. I could see it in the way he rushed over and held her hand. I think NL believed me too, although she just looked a bit stunned. Here she was hoping to be healed, and now she was hearing she had a whole other problem. The captain was wavering, but I could see she still wanted to argue. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, I rolled to the edge of the pillows and slapped my hand down on the floor. "House, hear me." I meant to sound commanding, but somehow I sounded like the voice of God. I swear upon my magic that what I've said here tonight is the truth. I call upon you to bear witness to my words. I would never have done this if I hadn't have felt the Allrune here. I also realized that this was exactly the core group needed to bring magic back to their people. NL was going to be a mage if she didn't die from magic leakage. CL was her support, her rock. He would be there for her through thick and thin. The captain was the person in authority that could advocate for her and keep her safe. I'm sure not all Centaur Llamas were going to be happy that some of them got their magic back. Now, they just needed to believe. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the floor started vibrating again, except this time the Allrune kicked it up a notch. He kept the fast, small vibrations, but he added in a whole rolling element. It wasn't much, but CL and the captain were having problems staying on their feet. Now the Allrune had their attention, he added lightning. Incredibly loud, incredibly brilliant lightning. The air smelled of ozone and fire, and thunder shook my bones. Then a wind sprang up. How the hell we had a windstorm indoors, I had no idea. It blew me, NL, and all of our cushions across the room and into the wall. It picked up force, blowing CL, the captain, and all the furniture into the wall too. It was so loud the wind screamed at us, and the pressure was so strong I was starting to have trouble breathing. Everything that wasn't nailed down flew across the room and slammed into the wall with us. The Allrune really wanted to get this point across, and it worked too. I heard the captain yell something, and just like that, the wind stopped. I took a moment to get my breath back and looked around. The place was a wreck. All their pictures and figures had fallen off the walls and blown across the room. It wasn't like it just needed to be put back either, as most of them were broken. The wind had whipped through the kitchen too, as there were broken plates, silverware, spices, pots, etc., all smashed up against the wall. CL looked heartbroken. This was going to take hours to clean up, and I'm sure most of the shattered items couldn't be replaced. NL looked furious. She'd probably spent a lot more time here than CL. This was her home, her safe space, and it had been violated. Then I felt the Allrune flex, and suddenly the most amazing thing happened. Everything started moving back. The rugs scooted back into place, and the furniture walked over and sat down on them. The side tables went up as the cutlery flew back into the kitchen. The best part was the busted pictures started coming back together. The pieces of glass flew back into the frames, fused together, and then hung themselves back on the walls. It was like watching a movie in reverse, or like Mary Poppins had snapped her fingers and now everything was going to be all right again. I zoomed across the floor with all my pillows, and NL came with me. For some reason she thought this was the funniest thing, and she laughed and laughed. Oh, the mushrooms! In the middle of all this excitement, the ants must have kicked in and started slinging spores. I checked her out my magic site, and sure enough, they were almost done with the first pass. The moss was growing thick, and it was dotted with hundreds of mushrooms and little white flower runes. The rest of the room finished repairing, and when it was done, it was as good as new. I was very glad this miracle had happened. I did not want to be responsible for trashing CL's home. I felt the touch of the Allrune, but it wasn't as heavy as before. Just to be clear, we are now agreed that you guys have magic cores. I gave the captain the hairy eyeball. She threw up her hands in surrender. I think it's pretty obvious the house accepted your oath. So, yes, I agree. We have magic cores. Now, where do we go from here? I pushed for this because of NL, I said. Compared to other centaurs, she has a huge core. The problem is it's going to rupture. I don't know when exactly, but I can see it's under stress right now. What happens when it ruptures? CL asked. I could see he was trying to stay calm, but the way he went back over and held NL's hand told me he was worried. I honestly don't know for sure, I've said. I've never run across anything like this before. I can only guess. I stopped. Did I tell them what I really thought was going to happen? Go ahead and guess, the captain said. Life is full of the unknown, but it's better to figure out what you can. A plan based on a guess is still better than no plan at all. I gave CL a questioning look. I agree, he said. Tell me everything. I'd rather expect the worst than be surprised by it. I took a deep breath. I opened my mouth to tell him what I knew, when suddenly it all snapped into place. I had a solid theory for what had happened. I've always been good at seeing patterns. That's why I love Sudoku. I could see the patterns in the numbers lining up, and it just felt right. The additional information from CL and the captain, along with what I could see about the cores, settled into place. It felt right. Okay then. Centaurs are the only creatures I've seen without an aura. For every other living thing I've seen, there was always a touch of magic, and it was always contained inside an aura. You guys are the only ones that break that rule. Or at least you seem to. All this is pure conjecture, so I don't think this is the absolute truth or anything. But I think your mage of long ago didn't break this rule. I think he just bent it. I think he bent it a lot. If I had to guess, he didn't get rid of your magic. Instead, he crushed it. That got me looks of surprise. I think he took the aura of your ancestors and compressed them into a teeny tiny ball. Their magic stayed inside their auras and got compressed as well. I think compressing it like that made the aura very hard like a shell, and it kept any magic from emitting out, which made it very hard to find. Somehow, this compression breeds true, and your children were born with the same problem. If I had to guess, and I am definitely guessing, I think this has slowly changed over time. CL and the captain were hanging on my every word. I think when your enemy mage first compressed your auras, he made them very small. How small I don't know, but it was tiny enough to evade detection by the best house mages at the time. Over the years, this compression has relaxed a bit. I don't know how many hundreds of years it has been, but now your cores have gradually decompressed enough that someone like me can see them. I know you were guessing at this, but that makes sense, the captain said thoughtfully. I'll keep going then, I said. I think centaurs have different magical talents, just like humans. So it follows that some centaurs are born with a lot of magic. Because they have more power, they also have more pressure pushing against their shell. If the shell expands evenly, then there isn't a problem. But if there is a weak spot, then all that magic pressure will create a bulge in the shell, and eventually it will rupture. It would be like a balloon, except instead of air shooting out, it would be magic. What would happen then? CL asked. Oh boy, did I tell him what I really thought? This was personal. This was going to affect NL. Tell me, CL demanded. I don't know for sure, but I think magic equates life. If someone loses a bunch of magic, they lose a bunch of life. They might be sick or listless or start sleeping a lot. If they lose all their magic, they might die. There, I'd said it. I stayed quiet for a moment, letting them process it. I know what happens, CL said sadly. He turned to the captain. It's the wasting. You think? The captain said. Then she nodded. It does fit the logic. What is the wasting? I asked. It is our name for what we thought was a terrible disease, CL said. We have centaurs that are perfectly healthy and full of life. Then one day, they suddenly say they don't feel very well. There's no medical problem that we can see, but suddenly they start to waste away. They get weak and confused, they sleep a lot, then about a week later, they die. This started happening a few hundred years ago, and it's just gotten worse over time. We've consulted mages and natural healers, and nobody's been able to figure out the problem or come up with a cure. That is what happened to both of NL's parents. That is why she lives with me. He took a deep, shaky breath. I've never said this out loud, but I've always had this fear it could happen to her too. Tears started down his cheeks. She is such a joy to me. She supported me in my old age as much as I've supported her. I was so afraid I would die and leave her alone. He started to cry. Now I'm afraid she will die and leave me alone. It's not fair. She is the one that is so full of life. She laughs all the time, and she is so creative and wonderful. Everyone who knows her loves her. I should be the one going, not her." I could hear so much pain. He was angry. He was sad. He was afraid. He'd been holding this in for so long, and now it just flowed out. He knelt there beside his niece and held her and cried. She was tripping on mushrooms, so she just looked confused and happy. I was pretty sure she didn't understand any of this. I was already on the floor with them, so I scooted over and hugged them both. I hadn't known CL for very long, but I was already attached to him, and I wasn't going to leave him hanging in his moment of pain. Captain Wonder Woman just stood there looking uncomfortable. That was okay. When we needed action, that would be her time to shine. Bermuda joined in, and for a while we just shared CL's heartbreak. I didn't know his life story, but at that moment I felt like he was also mourning his family that had already passed on. Finally, he cried himself out. I continued to hold him and his niece, and Bermuda had climbed into his lap, purring. I knew firsthand how soothing Bermuda's purrs can be. CL turned his tear-stained face to me, giving me the saddest look. "Can you help her?" "I don't know, but I will try," I replied firmly. "I've learned a lot tonight, and I've guessed a lot more. I'll use that to come up with a plan. I have a few ideas already, but I can't do anything while she's tripping like this. We're going to have to let this healing run its course, then we'll see what we have to work with." I turned to the captain. "This means I'll need to be able to see NL again. Can you work something out where I don't have to fight to do it?" "I'll see what I can do," the captain replied. "Maybe we can bring her to you, or maybe I can get you a temporary pass for the gathering. Either way, I'll make it happen." "Thank you," I said sincerely. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. The captain went over and opened it and had a quick conversation with the guard outside. Then the door opened wider, and the young centaur waiter came inside. I almost whistled in surprise. The human part of my waiter was hot. The light had been low at the banquet, and he'd had on a very smart uniform, so the only thing I'd really noticed was that he had cute eyes and a wide smile. Now he was shirtless, and I was like, damn. He looked like a bodybuilder. The young kind where they get too big before they get too big and start looking weird. His abs were chiseled from marble by a gay sculptor who liked abs. He had an 8-pack, and they were the kind of abs that had actual bumps, not just flat outlines. His lats flexed every time he moved his arms, and it looked like wings were ready to fly out. The best part were his shoulders. They were broad, rounded, Herculean. To top all that off, he was so cute. This hunk of man centaur was going to carry me back to my room. Yes, please. Good God, girl, get a grip. My analytical side smacked me over the head. He's not even human, and you have a boyfriend. Keep your mind on your business. Whatever, I smacked him back. He's eye candy. Lovely, delicious eye candy. Besides, I've done as much as I can until we see what happens with NL's healing. Everything has been so serious, a little fun is in order. Regardless, my analytical side smacked me back again. You are representing mages everywhere. The house just backed you up on an oath. This is a momentous moment. Why don't you turn into Anna Lickett, I suggested. She would try to get me to do naughty things to Mr. Muscles. It's a lot more fun to say no to her than yes to you. Then I poked him in the ribs. He laughed and tried to poke me back. I jumped on him and tickled him until he snorted. You are just horrid, he gasped in between snorts. I let him up and stuck my tongue out at him. He stuck his tongue out back. I made it look like I was going to tickle him again, and he ran away. It's a 3-ring circus in my head sometimes. It's a good thing people can't see what I'm thinking. I realized I'd been staring at young Muscles the whole time, so I quickly looked away. Then I couldn't help myself, and I looked back. He had a grin on his face like he knew exactly what was going on in my head. He flexed a bit, and I wanted to drool. Is that all right, Jason? The captain asked. Do what? Apparently she'd been talking. Can you run that by me again? I asked. I said, if you are ready to go, we are ready to escort you to your room. The captain sounded stern. She did not like repeating herself. It looks like my ride's here, I said lightly, so let's do this. I gave NL and CL the last hugs of the evening. I'll see you tomorrow night, I told them. We'll see how NL is doing and go from there. Have faith. This is the start of your journey together. Mr. Muscles came over and gave me a hand up. Things had gotten so exciting, I'd almost forgotten about my leg, but standing up brought it all back. The pain made me gasp and double over. I held under Mr. Muscles and breathed through it. Finally, I stood upright again. Young master, I'm very sorry to have met you again in these circumstances. I was hoping to see you at the dance tomorrow night and maybe chat for a few minutes. Well, I'm very glad to meet you here, I said sincerely. As you can see, there's no way for me to run home, so I'm glad you are here to help. Now, I don't have a translator, so there's no way to say your name correctly. Would you mind if I gave you a nickname? Not at all, he said with a smile. I started out with CL and his niece NL. So how would you like MM? It probably didn't match his real name at all, but in my mind he was already Mr. Muscles, so MM was perfect. I like that, he said. MM it is. And you can just call me Jason, I replied. All right, Jason, are you ready to go? He asked. I nodded. The captain was starting to look antsy. She was ready to get the show on the road. I put on the backpack and Bermuda hopped inside. Then MM reached down and easily swept me off my feet. My leg bent and I hissed in pain again. For some reason, it felt even worse this time. I put my arms around MM's shoulders, buried my face in his neck, and took deep breaths until the pain subsided. Finally, I was able to relax a bit, and I realized where my face was. His neck was yummy and warm and way too intimate. We'd only just been introduced, for crying out loud. I quickly leaned back in his arms, giving him a guilty smile. Sorry about that. It's all good, he said with a kind smile. I waved goodbye to CL and NL as MM gently eased me through the door. The hallway was not what I'd expected. When we'd gone inside, it had been empty. Now it was full of llamas. Several of them had their eyes lit up, so I assumed they were recorders. As soon as they saw me, they started shouting questions. It was like the paparazzi had arrived. Fortunately, the captain was up to the task. She barked a command and our honor guard formed up around us. Then we started off at a run down the hallway. Somehow, all the crowd got out of the way in time, so there was no need for the guards to use their riot gear. I also was very glad to see that 2 guards had been left behind to stand outside CL's door. If the paparazzi was here was anything like the press at home, they would have been pounding on his door trying to get a story. CL didn't need that right now. Our group ran down the hall, hitting one of the major hallways, and kept going. There was definitely a crowd now. Everyone was staring at me, and it felt unnerving. Plus, we were shifting quickly to avoid knots of people, and it was starting to make me sick. So I buried my face in MM's neck again and just held on. I could still see with my magic sight, but at least it was better now. We went a different route than before, and finally we came to the wall of hallways. We passed several of them, and finally took one that looked like all the rest. I'm so glad I wasn't trying to get around here by myself. I'd get lost in no time. Once we entered the hallway, we left the crowd behind. I guessed only centaur llamas that had duties with the rest of the house were allowed here. I started looking around and enjoying the view. I wasn't the only one. Bermuda had ducked down in the backpack as he didn't like the crowds either. Now he popped his head up, looked around, and started sniffing the wind. Thank you for the ride, I said. You are most welcome, MM replied. I've known NL for a long time. She is a wonderful girl, and I'm glad you were trying to help her. I saw your fight. That was just insane. Yeah, CL told me about the fight to get into the Centaur land. But it was supposed to be just ceremonial. Instead, the whole thing blew up into this big deal. Speaking of that, I now have pearls. Well, I sort of have pearls. CL is holding them for me. He's going to talk to you about the banquet. I felt so bad when I didn't have any pearls to give. You were so good to us and made sure we had such a wonderful evening. I'm glad you had a good time, and it was a pleasure serving you, M said. Speaking of which, make sure you don't eat or drink anything at the dance tomorrow night until you get with me. The theme of the night is Deadly Bite, and all the food and drink is modeled after something dangerous or poisonous. For real? I gave him an incredulous look. Why would anyone want to do that? It's to show off their perfect bodies and how powerful their magic is, he replied. Since we don't have magic, we have to wear protective gear just to serve the drinks. I'm guessing that your house doesn't want anything to do with that. Damn right we don't, I growled. One night of poison is enough for me, and thanks for the heads up. I'll make sure we only taste what you give us. We ran in silence for a moment, and I marveled at just how smooth was. His powerful shoulders flexed beneath my hands. I hadn't noticed his arms before, but he held me like I weighed nothing. I just floated along like I was butter. Must be all the muscles, I murmured. You like my muscles, he asked. Oh crap, I'd said that out loud. I was just thinking how smoothly you run, I said quickly. Then I gave him a big grin. And yeah, I like your muscles. Then I thought about what I'd said, and it could be taken wrong. Not that I want to offend you in any way, I said quickly. He just laughed. No offense taken. I work at the warehouse during the day. That's what gives me all the strength. Believe me, carrying you is nothing compared to some of the things I move around. So you work 2 jobs, I asked. Sometimes, he replied. I like being a waiter for special events like the gathering. It lets me meet new people and try new things. Plus, it gives me extra money for traveling. You like to travel, I said. Where have you gone? Nowhere yet, he admitted. I live with my grandmother for now, and she needs me. Someday, though, I'd love to go to the different houses, see their cities, eat their food, enjoy all the different ways of living. That sounds wonderful, I said. When Louisville is a safer place, I'd love for you to come and visit us. We are a melting pot of different types of cuisine, and we have a vibrant art scene. We have a little park outside our house that is just wonderful, and they perform Shakespeare in the park. Maybe Sandy has a charm that can disguise you, and we could sneak you in. I'd like that very much, said wistfully. Then he looked around. We are almost at your suite, and I wanted to ask you how the healing went. It went very well, I replied. We will have to see how it turns out, though. I just started it tonight, and it will have to run its course. As for the rest, I don't know. We'll just have to tackle that when we can. I was talking to myself more than him at that point. I was already thinking about possible solutions to her core. The captain looked over her shoulder, shooting me a pointed look. That's when I realized this was a secret. I wasn't supposed to be saying anything about it yet. Then it also hit me what he'd said. He lived with his grandmother. Were his parents dead? Was he in the same situation as NL? I quickly scanned him and found his core. It was big, almost as big as NL's. Damn. Fortunately, he didn't have a bulge. I gave it a really good look. No small bulges either. He was good for now. But if I found a solution for NL, I'd need to apply it to him too. Gave me a strange look, but he didn't ask anything further, and we soon arrived at the narrow hallway that led to our fireplace. The captain barked a command, and the unit took up positions against the wall. We continued down the hallway and stepped through the fireplace. Sandy was sitting on the couch looking worried. She jumped to her feet when we came in, then quickly made room as 2 centaur llamas filled the space pretty quickly. Take me to the bedroom before you set me down, I said, and Sandy opened the door and led the way. Put me down gently, and my leg flared up again with white-hot pain as it straightened back out again. I held onto the dresser and breathed through it. Finally, I looked up and gave a weary smile. Thank you so much for all your help tonight, I told the centaurs. There is no way I could have made it through the evening without you. I gestured to come in closer, then I hugged him. You are my friend, Jason, he said sincerely. I'll see you tomorrow night, and if you need it, I'll carry you home again. Then he did something totally surprising. He put his hands on either side of my face and kissed me full on the lips. It wasn't with tongue or anything, but it was a real kiss. I was so shocked I didn't know what to say. He stepped back, and the captain stepped forward. You are my friend, Jason, she said. Sincerely, I saw you as an opportunity at the start of the evening, but by the time we reached the end, you had changed my world. That almost never happens. I think we shall see much more of each other. Sleep tight and sleep well, my little warrior." Then she put her hands on either side of my face and kissed me too. Wonder Woman to kiss me. Damn, this was the night for kisses. "I bid you both farewell," the captain said formally. Then they turned and left. Sandy had an amused look on her face. "So, first base, yeah?" "I was as shocked as you were," I laughed. "Now help me get into bed." "What happened?" Sandy asked while she helped me get undressed. I told her the story as we moved along. When she saw my leg, she hissed in sympathy. My right thigh was a mass of black and blue. It looked so bad I even winced in sympathy for myself. I crawled in bed and kept telling the story as she put away the backpack and made sure Bermuda had food for the night. Then both of them came back and curled up on the bed with me while I finished the story. By the time I was done, I was falling asleep. I'm sure Sandy had so much to say about everything, but I didn't have the energy for it. She gave me a hug and kissed me on the forehead. Then she paused and did it again. "That last one was for Annabeth," she said softly. "If she were here, she'd be mothering the heck out of you." "For sure," I thought silently, but I was too tired to say anything else. Sandy turned on the light in the bathroom, then closed the door mostly shut. It made for a perfect nightlight. That was so thoughtful. After all, the last thing I needed was to bang my leg into the furniture if I needed to get up in the middle of the night. She laughed and Bermuda rolled over on the pillow and began licking my face. Ah, kitten kisses. The best of them all, I thought silently. Then I fell asleep. And thus ends chapter 12. So I hope you have lots of kitten kisses tonight, and I will see you next week. Thank you.